Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite to that is mythology or mythology, which is science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. I have a very special guest today, and you all love him, the kind of shows he puts on, and you'll see his name very shortly. And I met him in Jaipur Dialogues, and uh, and to see a person in person, the people in person, they look much different than what they are on the screen. And he's a very handsome person, and also has done a remarkable work in a very short span of time. So, so let us welcome Aadi Achint from deftalks. We are interviewing the interviewer itself.
Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, sir. Thank you so much. You brought me here. Uh, nice to meet you. Firstly, Jaipur mein, when we met, it was very nice, and nice to be on your platform.
Thank you very much, Adi. Adi, I have seen that you take very detailed, और आप सीधा topic के अंदर घुस जाते हैं, because it's your own interest, the way you are, and it's your own interest. You learn a lot of research and study, and you make presentations also in the solo ones I've seen that. One thing I have noticed in your last interview, you mentioned about the Western media analysts on war. And just to for housekeeping things, if you see my logo, that means you're on the full screen. So what do you think about the Western analysts? You took the name of Scott Ritter, and Scott Ritter and I have been in touch with each other for a long time, and we keep playing tags with each other. And suddenly, I also noticed that he seems to be more Chinese agenda friendly, and also the other Douglas MacGregor also, because they're whimsically anti USA. I I'm a citizen of this country and I respect the constitution of this country. At the same time, I take a balanced stand. Where it is needed, we must criticize. Where it is not needed, we must appreciate also. There are many things good also. So, what do you overall rate the Western military analysts? Because nowadays they fall short of running on a preconceived 1945 agenda. Long question, okay? But I know
No,
you
no,
have done a lot of homework.
interesting question, sir. Because I used to listen to these guys because I said, okay, here is some voice coming from within America who understands what's the game inside America, right? And what's the balance? क्या है? What is the structure? कैसा है? And then when the Russia-Ukraine war started, it was very interesting to see them speaking the right narrative. They all came out and said, Russia is not to be blamed. This is a war which is imposed upon them. And that is something that we realized, कि, okay, fine. There are two sides to the story. कुछ तो गड़बड़ है कहीं ना कहीं. And then we started seeing them within that time duration kind of start saying that China is something which needs to be reconciled with. China needs to be talked to. China needs to be, used to everybody's advantage and this and that. And I said, okay, fair enough. That's a point of view. But somewhere down the line, one has, after a careful thought, one has realized that being anti-USA is fine. I mean, I have no problems. If anybody can be anti or pro anything. It's a free world. But the sheer factor that anti-US thing transposes into other issues in the world. For example, when we saw the attack on Israel, जब Israel में जो 7th October what happened, and वो बहुत ही, I mean, it was a disaster of an attack. 1400 लोग, brutality is something. अभी क्या, what can one explain? So I don't want to even get into that. And we saw these guys actually starting to blame Israel right at the get-go. Now that put me in a little bit of a conundrum, and I said, yeah, what is this? Why is this? Why are they doing this? Then I realized that these guys are in a place, at such a bias that anything that the US will support is wrong. May it be the right thing. अगर वो चीज ठीक भी है, उसको support भी करेंगे तो कोई, there is no, you can't be, we can't stand with it. And that was very interesting to me because the Chinese have been also talking in the same language. when we see the way Chinese have responded to this whole Hamas attack and all that stuff, they also said the same thing: two-state solution right from the get-go. No apology, no feeling sad about what happened. No, we are sorry that this is what happened to your country. Nothing. We need two-state solution. Israel is to blame. USA is to blame. And that's curious. Here, why is this narrative coming across? Then I did a little digging to realize that the Chinese are as much as involved in this as anybody else. You have a country. Let's thoda break this thing down, which has happened. You have a country which is supplying money to the Hamas. How? Binance. I am sure you guys in the US, Binance mein kya ho raha hai wahan par. What's happening there? He has been convicted of over 100,000 transactions, where these transactions have been actually linked to ISIS, Al Qaeda, and Hamas. Binance has very deep connections with the Chinese state. We know in India also, Manipur, there has been an issue. A lot of the money was crypto. How do you think they suddenly bought so many weapons and this and that and of very high caliber? Yeah, if that kind of money exists in those regions, then why are they cribbing in the first place? Problem kya hai? When we look at China today, what has it done to the society in general of the West? There is only one thing that comes out where India was the smartest player in the world, I think, which is TikTok. Look what is the impact of TikTok on the society. The whole leftist agenda, which is promoted there, the LGBTQ agenda, I would openly say this pro-Hamas agenda, which is promoted on that platform, jo TikTok ke andar jo videos and this and that, which are there, is inciting people. TikTok itself says that it has taken out over 1 million videos that it felt were odd. If it's taken out 1 million videos, you can imagine what was actually standing there and what is going around and being consumed by the society in the West. So, jo aap ye road pe, you're seeing the demonstrations on the road, you're seeing the whole drama which is happening around. You can see from the river to the sea. This is all coming out of TikTok. I have been very clearly saying this. This is a complete Chinese plan to dominate and break down the societies in the West. And I've come up with a term for this. This is something that I've been using on my platform for some time. It is called a Sino-Wahhabi Leftist Alliance. Right? If you look at this, charon taraf se, the ecosystem is literally alive right now. And if people like us speak, we are called what? Genocide abaters and Putin propagandists. Just because we take the side of reality? No. You're not allowed to do that. But people like Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, and all these guys, you can see that they're not speaking the right thing. You see their following has dropped because people realize, yeah, what is this nonsense? You're supporting China who's done this? You're supporting China who's troubling people in Asia? So they lost their balance when they purported the Russia, China to be the only global superpowers and USA being the what do you call the demon, if I may, the Satan of the world. And that is not fair. USA has its problems. There is no question. They've done a lot of wrong things. But I ask one question out of everyone who says this. If you are the sole superpower in the world, consider yourself as a country. Whichever country you take it, India, UK, France, any country you take it. If you are the sole superpower in the world, wouldn't you do the same things as the USA has done? Exert your power and make sure people know you're the big dog. I mean, that's the law of the land. That's law of nature. You can criticize them. You can do what you want to with them, but that's how superpowers behave. Look back in history. At the end of it, USA was also a colony at one time of a superpower which did unspeakable things around the world. Why have we forgotten this basic law? You criticize the US, structure your agreement, fantastic. But somewhere down the line, it has got mixed up with Chinese propaganda.
From the perspective of Native Americans, still a colony. So Native Americans, Native Canadians, they
Yeah.
call that their land has been
So there are
snatched
there
away
are
by
issues.
settlers.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There are multiple issues. No country is pure and beautiful. Every country has issues. But then US, the whole global structure today. Let's understand this one thing very, and I'll just take one more minute. If you look at the global security structure today, what is it? It is the USA controlling the oceans, which is allowing the trade of the world to happen with one another. And that is so-called the 1945 Bretton Woods Agreement, as so-called whatever people disagree with today. The USA created a structure. They created a navy of destroyers and cruisers and stuff like that. And they said, yeah, we will patrol the waters. You guys trade, but please keep our security in mind whenever you do anything. We will protect you in the open ocean. We will consider your issues. We will take care. We will not allow piracy. We will work with you. We will spend our money to protect your trade. That's what exactly was happening. And I'm not a USA apologist by any chance. I find some of the stuff that they do with India absolutely appalling. Let me say that very clearly right at the beginning, because one of your audience will say, yeah, this guy is a USA apologist. I'm not. They built up a structure where nobody else had the power to do it. And now they rule it. There are few countries like us also who are fighting back, but there is a division. There is something called a revisionist structure, wherein you want to work within the structure to change it, right? Or a reformist structure, and there is a revisionist structure, which is the Chinese way of doing it. They say that we throw the US out into the ocean and we become the ruler. So we need to decipher these two things very clearly.
Great point, Adi. And you and I share the common first name, Aditya, and people call me Adi in the US, very common. Because they will massacre my name all the time. Aditya means
Yeah.
it will take 30 years to say Aditya. Anyway, so you made some very important point. The Binance, people do not understand what is Binance may mean, because you may think in India you may use these terms, but in American audience may not know what is Binance mean actually.
It's a cryptocurrency, right? Now the whole world of cryptocurrency cannot be explained by anybody.
Correct.
Find me two people, and even the owners of these companies, they will talk about the whole crypto structure as something that you've never heard. Everybody says, yeah, I know how it works, but nobody really does. There are some of these cryptocurrencies that are somewhat regulated and somewhat audited. Here is a cryptocurrency that was based out of China. It was running its mining operations out of China. The guy's wife is Chinese, who was a TV presenter in China. And you can't become a TV presenter in China if you don't know people in the Communist Party, if you don't have the backing of the Communist Party. Let's be very clear on that. Okay. Now, when we see a structure like that, and that structure is openly admitted to actually funding terrorist organizations, what more can one say? Now, cryptocurrencies are such funny things that nobody knows how they run, right? There is some sort of a structure which is created at the back end, and everybody will give you this formula. This is how it works, that is how it works, this is how it's done, that is how. All that is fine. Who's regulating it? Are we so mature in this world today that we need an unregulated currency around a place wherein one guy can just. What happened with Sam Bankman-Fried, that SBF? I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing his last name. What happened with SBF? He was washing money for Ukraine. And he was washing money for many within the establishment. He's liable for a jail term of what, 110 years? I mean, isn't that ridiculous? So here is two live examples that we have of people that have been using money, hard-earned money of some people, as a matter of fact, and twisting it around, turning it around the way they feel like it. And it is unregulated, so it is going for various different nefarious activities. Let me break something down for you. As far as terrorism is concerned, in the last year itself, right? This is a UN report. $20 billion have been washed through cryptocurrencies.
Like that.
You know, if a country like Pakistan gets 20 billion, they'll be dancing in the streets. People will be kissing each other's feet, head, toes, everything. That country cries for $1 billion, $2
More
billion,
jihad against India, Hindus.
right? 20 billion has been washed across, which people don't even know where it is gone. We can see, look at the Hamas and their infrastructure. Here's a country so-called in an open-air concentration camp, so-called in an open-air prison, but that can import all the cars it wants, right? All the food that it wants, all the rockets and all the chemicals that it wants. It can import 1 million tons of cement and create the tunnels. By the way, that has been built by Chinese engineers. Let me say that very clearly. Okay, Chinese engineers have built a lot of the tunnel systems here. They can be a part of all sorts of nefarious activities within the region, from drug running to human trafficking to all sorts of things. But just because the leftist media will come out and, start supporting them and talk about something called proportionality in war. What is proportionality in war? Oh, you've killed one, so when we killed one of yours, that is it. The war is over. Is that how it works? I mean, do people even know that during the Normandy landings on the June 5th in the Second World War, in the beaches of France, the Allied forces killed 60,000 French people in the softening up operations before this landing? 60,000. Who talks about that? Who talks about the firebombing of Dresden? The firebombing of Tokyo, where I mean, Dresden, officially, they accept 35,000 people in one night. Weren't they civilians? That's how war is. The proportionality means nothing. And people are talking about it in such glory that, oh, no, the Palestinians are this thing, Palestinians are that thing. This is a... I mean, I really wonder what's happened to people. There are Harvard University, student gatherings, unions, or whatever the hell they are, talking about, oh, we support the resistance. A 3-month-old baby or 3-year-old baby getting kidnapped is resistance? In what book? I'd really like to know what Israel is doing a war crime, what the Palestinians or the Hamas or whoever they are did on the October 7th is not. Nobody talks about that. Why? Because that is not part of the narrative. That is not what earns you the money. And that is the sad story of things. During the time when this thing was happening, 1,500 people in a village in northern Africa were massacred by one of these Islamist organizations, radical Islamist organizations. Who talks about that? They're also human beings. 1,500 people in one day. They rounded that entire village up and they recorded videos. Huh? Who talks about that? Now, isn't that a bias? Just because it is happening in area of interest where a lot of the lobbies are aligned to, you are worried and you're this thing. Oh, what is this? What is this? Here, there is a country, Pakistan, right next to us. Deported almost 300,000 Afghans on the road. Just picked them up and threw them out. What are those guys supposed to do? And they've been sent to Afghanistan, of all the places. Afghanistan, which is supposed to be a terrorist country, and not one human rights organization, not one UN whatever they call it, session meeting or whatever the hell they call it. It's so irrelevant that I don't even feel like learning the terms. Nobody talks about this and everybody's happy-go-lucky. Oh, Palestine, Palestine, Palestine. This is the bias which is wrong. You want to shout about something, let's shout about everything under the sun. Otherwise, let's not do it. Wars are ugly. They are ugly. Whoever spoke about a clean war, I'm yet to see a clean war till now. We've had wars in our country. Civilians died on our side, civilian died on the other side. That's how it is.
Very valid points, actually. See, one of the things which really comes to the, if you look at the Western media, TikTok is bad for US, but they
That's an
exporting
understatement.
Instagram, they put Instagram as good for everybody else. And we all know most of the regime changing operations were done by the Facebook groups, Facebook
Yeah.
pages, and Instagram. And why should the world accept American media organizations, but they can ban TikTok? That's the logic because of which TikTok is not banned, okay, in the
Yep.
US.
Hmm.
And the most of the funding of TikTok, even though many of the Congress people, they you must have seen the famous debates, Vivek Ramaswamy versus Nikki Haley, and where when he calls out and he was called openly a scum, American media you'll see very much talking about President Putin as regime, Putin regime, and Modi regime. But when it comes to Americans, they would have to accept American president. Others should say that. Like there is some kind of a privileged status which Americans expect for themselves, while the American media look at the Fox News, look at the CNN, and sometimes it also happens in India and other places. A mediocre American media person who is not even accepted in the US will become a hero in those countries. Very famous example is the US ambassador right now to India, and he's our ambassador, Eric Garcetti. I met him a couple of times in LA when he was the mayor, and we know who is this guy. And luckily he's doing a very India friendly job right now, dancing around and Holi and
It's
Diwali.
not luckily. It's not luckily.
I'll come to know. I'll come to know your points on that. But I'm just saying there is a certain expectation of privileged status which American media expects for Americans. And at the same time, we are talking about the media specifically. And at the same time, we talk about the media in India completely reporting AFP talking points. And that's why the talk shows of yours are famous because you go behind the scenes. So, so one rule for Americans, one rule for the rest of the world. And this is a rules based order we are talking about in media also. What is your view on this?
As far as India is concerned, they don't have a choice. Let me say that very clearly. And I've been talking about this for a while now. The world today has realized, boss, it's ideology versus money. Yesterday night, I was reading something where the ESG scores, where, all these wokist liberalist agenda are mapped on corporates. People are just quietly brushing that off. No more. Corporates are just quietly pushing that away. No, there is no dance drama about it, but it's just happening. What that means is a change in the global world order, right? If you look at the world order today, it was a very left centric world order where the left had almost 70 years after the Second World War to literally establish itself and establish their networks from academia to politics to bureaucracy to uh, think tanks to, I don't know, I mean, newspapers to media to everything. They had their hand everywhere. Now, what happens is in the past 10 years, that hand has been challenged. Because the mistake that the left made was they thought that the world was going to be in a constant after the unipolar moment, right? Now, what happened during the unipolar moment, if you look at people like Francis Fukuyama and all that, the end of history. I mean, how arrogant can you be? The end of history. So they basically created an infrastructure for themselves where everything would be controlled by them, for them, and anything that comes up would be termed as either fascist, dictator, a slap on democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that, and freedom of everything else in the under the sun. The media is no different. The rules are very, very similar for them because the ownership of these platforms and these structures have a certain agenda. And till the time the outlet does not conform to that agenda, it will not be let to survive, which brings about a very, very interesting thing called cancel culture. Right? So what these guys did was, if you look at, I call it the old deep state, right? This is the old deep state, and to put it in context for towards an American audience, and it will kind of relate to you, is called the State Department. Now, the State Department comes from a very, very archaic structure which was built around the Corporation of Rome, Corporation of London. We all know there's a small little country within London wherein even the Queen cannot go without permission. So that old structure, which is a very, very, kingly, royal sort of a, aristocratic structure which was there before. This is what used to control the world. So everything was, oh, we are good. And one of the biggest dialogues that you saw coming out from that was the white man's burden, right? It was the white man's burden to kind of educate the world, to bring these dirty brown people up, to teach them how to live in the world and stuff like that. So this was a very, very clear old structure that was continuing with a little bit of tweak to keep ensure that everybody gets something or the other. Today, with aspirations growing up in the world, that structure is being challenged. And even within the US, people are realizing, and these are the other new money which has come up. What is the new money in the US is the military industrial complex, right? A lot of people hate it, but that is backing the the new structure of the world, which is emerging right now. These are guys who basically say, listen, we need to earn money, right? And we need to find destinations where that money can be earned. China was one. If you know, some of your biggest hedge fund managers are now walking out of China because it's no more feasible, no more viable. And they are setting shop within India. You spoke about the rules of media. This is the interesting part which is coming out of this whole behind the scenes fight between the old deep state and the new structure, which is going to basically the new world order which will come across. So there is a tug of war between both of them, right? There is one part which is being a little more realist and saying, no, we can't go on like this. This has to change. And there is one part that says it has run for this much time. Let it go, because this is how the world works and it is in our advantage. So as far as the media is concerned, it is just touting that ideology which actually has created this structure. I don't think the media channels themselves, or these so-called journalists or these opinion makers that sit on our TVs in these little boxes around the place, have any ideology of their own. What they're doing is speaking the reading points issued to them by a structure which is, behind the curtains. They are told, if you go to any, for example, pro-Palestine rally, from the river to the sea, right? So somebody asks them, okay, what happens to the Jews? They can go, they all have, and the standard answer I've seen across the world is they all have dual citizenships. They can go back to the countries that they belong to otherwise. That means there is a toolkit, right? And we've seen in India how these toolkits have been used. As a matter of fact, some people are stupid enough of actually copying, pasting it as is. So we realize there are toolkits in play. So the media also follows this structure via toolkits which are thought about, via thought processes which are given, that you guys will not cross this line. And anybody who crosses this line becomes fascist, becomes dictator, becomes against democracy, becomes this, becomes that. Isn't that the dialogue we hear about every other country around the world? Putin, same thing. Xi Jinping, same thing. Modi, same thing. Now, are we trying to say there is no difference between a Putin, a Xi Jinping, and a Modi? One has to be really, really naive to think like that. And that is what we are seeing around the place. And I'm telling you this, let me make a small little, thought process which I'm working on is, you will find this narrative coming across to Netanyahu very, very, very shortly, that he's a fascist dictator. Because the anti-Israel lobby is going to use the same toolkit. The problem with this whole legacy media is they have forgotten that they use the same line, the same length. I mean, in USA, you've got baseball, right? What if I throw the ball in the same box, in the same point, every ball? The batter will know where the ball is going to come and he will be ready. And that's the problem. So these guys have become so predictable You cannot listen to the news and know what they're saying because it's a toolkit.
I made a very simple solution. 16 chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. If you read first 25 shloka, you know exactly what everybody is doing. Very clearly. The You made some very interesting observations actually here. And one of the things is which you made about toolkit. Most of the most of the Americans are not aware of toolkit phenomena.
Okay.
And the toolkit, the word is more popular in the Indian media because of the way that it was presented. But everyone is working on the same toolkit, right from Anthony Blinken to Secretary of
Absolutely.
Defense. They have the same words they use, same campaign, and Nikki Haley's campaign is exactly the same, and which Vivek Ramaswamy is opposing it. And you hear from top to down. And one of the things which you observed was Biden calling President Xi as dictator right after the summit, and Anthony Blinken's face turned sour. You saw that, everybody noticed it. You have published videos, pictures, everything. And the thing is, the media in the US, most of the Americans, if you hear, like I stopped listening to CNN since 2012, stopped listening to Fox News in 2020. It took me a long time, 8 years, to stop watching Fox News. And now when I come to social media, the people whom I thought were credible, like Scott Ritter and other people, they have turned out to be totally, they have exposed themselves out. So now there is no one in the American media whom you can trust now from any place. Now the only thing remaining is pick up few channels on YouTube, pick up few channels on Twitter, and keep observing. Tucker Carlson was silenced in a royal way. You all know, we all
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
how he
Mm-hmm.
was silenced. And luckily, he has found his voice on X, but now the media is going after X, and
Yep.
which Elon Musk, a billionaire, is complaining now because he knows the system is rigged. And if they can prosecute Trump, they can prosecute X very
He's
easily.
next.
Is
He's
next.
next.
So, what do you see the future of American media? I mean, Indian media, people like you and other people, they have really brought out the truth in many ways. What do you see the future right now?
That's a very interesting question because I don't know how much Americans know about anything. The way that the American mindset has actually has kept itself during the Ukraine war was quite an astonishing thing. You know, from actually having these little flags on your Twitter post to having flags in front of your house and this and that, that made you believe that the most of the American people still believe the media and they still kind of relate to them as the giver of information, right? In India, that's not the case. What happened in India was that at a point of time, sometime, and I would say COVID changed quite a lot of things. People knew there was something wrong with the media before. But I think COVID was a time where people in India realized there is a lot more to the game that meets the eye. Because the communication that came from the government, right? And this time, I mean, I must say the Indian government outdid itself in terms of communication uh, during COVID. The communication that came from the government seemed like making sense. It connected and resonated with people, and people just did what the government said. And it was no pressure. It was no this and that. It was voluntary. The government involved people around the place and said, "We need your help. Come, let's do this together." Whereas the media was saying something totally different. So people said, hang on, there's something wrong here. So today, a large section of India has realized that the media has an agenda, right? Which is not the realization I see across the world. Why? You look at BBC. The BBC put out what do you call a documentary on Mr. Modi calling him a butcher, right? Now, the butcher of Gujarat is what they said. But when the Hamas did whatever it did, they said they're not terrorists because we can't take sides. Wasn't calling Mr. Modi a butcher taking sides? So people started questioning this. In the UK, there is at least a certain question which is coming out. And honestly commend people like, although he's still far left, not far left, but still center left, like Piers Morgan and all these guys, for asking the right questions at least. His beliefs are different, but he's asking the right questions. There are very few voices that can be seen asking the right questions. I can see Sky News Australia asking the right questions. Rita Panahi and all these people there, they're asking the right questions. But generally speaking, if there is a media network that actually comes up in the US that starts talking the truth, it's going to be quite a shocker, right? And that is where they call Donald Trump to be, I want to find the right word, you know, uh, I don't know, wild, crazy, because he speaks the truth. People haven't heard these kind of things. People across the world say, yeah, you guys did what he's saying. Okay, fair enough. We accepted it. So do you. But people in America have not heard these things. People in America have been kept away from reality. So I wonder what's going to happen to the population when somebody just knocks on the door and says, no, this is the reality. You asked me about toolkits. Now, toolkits is a structure that is created and issued, by the way. A lot of Americans believe that the CIA does all this stuff. Well, the CIA is part of a system. CIA is also, it's the action arm of it. It's a very small part of that system. It doesn't run anything as per se. It doesn't have that power, because the power is with the few people who are hidden behind. People don't even know who these people are. A toolkit is issued to create a thought process and create that narrative, right? So it is talking points 1, 2, 3, 4. If it is Israel, you will say 1, you will say 2, you will say 3, you will say 4. If it is Ukraine, you will say Ukraine is winning, Ukraine is this, Ukraine is that, Ukraine is a beacon of democracy, is this. Which, when people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's still acceptable to the larger crowd and to the media to a certain extent, when people like him start talking about this, everybody in the US's eyes are open and he's saying, what is this man talking? Where is he coming from? Well, let me just say this to the people that are listening. We in India, we talk about these things normally. So what Vivek is talking today isn't news for us. Please have a look at my channel. Have a look at Jaipur Dialogues. Have a look at other channels. You will realize these are conversations we've been having for years now.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And I would say minimum 3 years is what we've been talking about, that there is something happening here that these guys not realizing, and their media is completely gone. So when X opened up, Twitter became X. Now you look at the kind of information that is coming out. And I'm saying this very clearly. If Elon Musk hadn't done what he had done, what happened in Israel on the 7th of October wouldn't have been known to people at all. It would have been just, the narrative would have been different. You remember what happened to people when they started talking against Ukraine in the beginning months of the war? You got plucked out and thrown. Finished. There's no anti-Ukraine. The Ukrainians created a hit list of people. There were 3 Indians on that list. Scott Ritter was on that list. I really thought this guy is this, he's going to stand for the truth. But the minute he started, oh, Israel is a apartheid state. How? Please explain to me how. Israel is an apartheid state, but what Palestinians do to themselves, forget anybody else. What they do to themselves, that is a beacon of democracy, right? In 2 days of ceasefire, the Hamas has killed 60 residents. 2 of them were hung under bloody lampposts on the border for being alleged spies of Israel. This is Hamas. And what freedom? Which world are we living in? I mean, are we in a sense of reality? And this is my worry. If Americans actually vote right this time, and I don't know how far, what is the election game and how far things will actually work out correctly, but if it actually votes right, to the right side of the segment, and votes correctly as well, both meanings of the word right, there is going to be a literal re-education of the American society. Because one thing that is there is that the Americans have never come up to the other part of the world to learn anything. They won't watch an Indian social media channel for their information because they'll say, what do these guys know? But I would recommend that they start doing so, because the kind of stuff we are talking about will be so news to you guys, and it will change your perspective around the place, which is the reality of the future tomorrow.
When Arnab Goswami was questioning very powerfully to the Ukrainians, and that Arnab Goswami became a ground hit here. And today I was at a coffee shop in the morning, and it was a Irish, Scottish, and they say 2% Irish, 3% Scottish. And my general question to them is, you are talking about a human or a dog breed? And 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 she told me that I watch Indian channels but I don't understand their accent. And I told them that you have to get used to the accent because you have 4 million Indian Americans here. You get used to the accent. Not everybody is going to pick up American accent, and English is spoken in many accents, not just one accent.
Even
And
in the US.
even in the US, I mean, Louisiana English, I can't understand many times. And the Alabama English is different. New York English is different. California English is different in terms of accent. And you mentioned about the Sky News, Rita. And Sky News is just a puppet of the American and the British intelligence, you can
Yeah.
say very clearly. But at the same time, highly guided by the church, because the church has, so see the public positions of the Pope always on the left, ultra left.
Yep.
So, and this shows the deep state linkages here, right from the Abrahamism down to the media. And then that's how they control the narrative, because it's a faith. Because when you go to a church, you have to listen. You don't have to read Bible, you have to listen. And you can't ask a question over there. And suddenly that kind of habit has come in. I mean, despite having all economic hardships and everything which Americans are facing, almost like 28% inflation today, no protest on the ground, nowhere.
Because they
Because
don't know.
they don't know. And also the culture is just take it because the ruler can be very ruthless. This is a history. There is a fear. And that's how there is a Second Amendment. There is a reason for Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And the amendment is to protect the rights of the ordinary citizens, where the governments can go crazy. And the founders of USA, they knew their own society very well because they came from that society. They knew it. That's how it was kept in that constitution. Now, tell me one thing, and this will be my last question of this one, because uh, I want to ask you a lot of things and I want to discuss a lot of things. But
We'll do more, sir, at your convenience.
yeah. So the what do you see in the depth of the media? Because the media in the West doesn't represent the people of the West. Especially when I say West, only 4 countries I mean: US and UK
The
and
Anglo-Saxon world.
Anglo-Saxon world mostly. 4 or 5 countries. The rest, everyone is to be consumed in the fire of the capitalism. And so these 4 countries which are represent the West and they lead the West, where do the people, they can't go to Indian media because Indian media is restricted in the US, and a lot of YouTube shows also not visible here, many YouTube shows, and the tagging doesn't work. So where do you think an American media and can actually do you even think they can tell the truth also? Do you think? Because I don't see that possibility right now. What do you say?
At the moment, no, sir. There is very little this thing, because the control is so hard. It is so hard. You mentioned Sky News. The When we see, and we also have multiple other outlets that are controlled by the intelligence agencies. Uh, there's a British agency newspaper, news outlet. I will tell you the name. It's on my tip of the tongue. I'm not able to remember it. And then you've got the Washington Post and all these guys. We know that they get their talking points from the CIA and stuff like that. That is what tells you that when these guys start talking, out of 100 articles, if they have two which are portraying some sort of reality, that tells you, okay, there's someone who's playing the game here. And that is what I'm talking about, that the West is actually going through a battle of ideologies, because the old state is pulling hard to keep that leftist agenda going. And that is what you can see on your streets today. You can see it in the streets of Europe. But there is a new structure which is fighting back and saying, no, oh, that's not going to happen. And that is where alternative media has come into place. Places like Substack, places like Rumble, places like X, places like, to an extent, to a very small extent, YouTube has also realized. And if you notice that YouTube has kind of allowed a certain amount of content on their platform where people can access the information if they need to. The point is that I keep saying this, I don't know what is Elon Musk's main purpose. What was his purpose of taking over X? But if this platform continues the way it is, and it is let to survive, and let me say this very clearly, let to survive, I think this is going to bring in a huge amount of change within a connect with people across the world. I'll give you a small example. So I cover the Israel war very, very carefully on my channel, and tactics, battle, politics, this, that, and everything. Every 2-3 days, I do an update. So yesterday, I had an Israeli gentleman, an ex-IDF soldier, on the platform, and he said, I'm surprised to see you Indians talking so clearly about the Israel war. It seems like you're you're an Israeli yourself. So I told him, please email me and let's get in touch and all that stuff. And he's emailed me and he said, we don't hear this stuff from our population, and we have to come to your platforms to actually learn what is happening. So the alternative sources, and India is coming out to be a big voice as far as alternative media is concerned. I don't have a TV. For the past, 13, 14 years, I don't have a TV. I mean, it's there in my house, but I don't have it in my room, or I don't watch it at all. I don't even know how to switch it on. Worst comes to worst. And even on my tab or anything like that, when I'm trying to find out something about something, the news network is the last thing I will click. Absolutely the last thing I will click. In the West, the problem is that the alternative sources of media has not really developed as much as it should, where the actual voice of the people is coming out. Now, in India, the foreign minister in India said that foreign policy is not the domain of only the external affairs ministry. Okay, fair enough. So people like me actually talk about foreign policy. I sometimes criticize it. I push it forward. I, inform people about it. And the discussions of foreign policy today are done at a ground level. You will find two people standing on a tea stall and talking, oh, Modi Saab is going here. He's probably doing this, this, and this. Oh, Qatar is having an issue with us. So we probably are looking for gas from somewhere else. Kahan se? Where will be looking for gas from? Somebody will say, Africa is a good source. Yeah, there's something which is happening in Africa. People are actually talking about this stuff on the road. Right. So it's not that evident right now, but there is a change which has happened in the Indian ground. Slow and steady, people are interested in geopolitics. They want to know what's happening around them. I don't see that in America. As long as they can get burgers and beers and probably a damn good diner breakfast in the morning, it doesn't impact them. Because America has always been this island which is surrounded by oceans, no threat to itself, and this and that. But the problem that I see is that the American left, which has actually opened up your borders and brought in the threat indoors, right? And people don't realize how many Chinese and Russians have actually gone inside America. How many of these Hamas guys have gone inside America? I think Delaware, there is a cell of Hamas and Hezbollah, which was recently mentioned by the FBI. If I'm not mistaken, it is Delaware. There's a huge cell of the Hamas which operates out of there. People don't realize what they are there. And let me tell you this, 9/11 changed a lot of the thought process for the Americans. I hope as heck to God nothing happens. But if something does, trust you me, there's going to be a revolution. People don't realize why in India people are so angry today. Because we are having a revolution. It's a revolution of our thought processes. I've seen people who didn't know stuff, and when they get to know stuff, they literally sit quiet for 3 days and think, what have I been living my life on? Why didn't I know these things about myself, my country? I'm talking about myself. When I realized what happened to us, what was our true history, and what all was done to us, it was a shocker. It made me angry. It made me have outbursts on social media against the West and this and that and stuff like that. But today I've kind of reconciled with it and I've learned about it and I've kind of put that in my perspective. And I know how to protect myself. And that's the lesson I want to learn. I wonder when that will happen to the American society, because it's something will something will trick off. I don't know what will, but there will be that one thing that will trick it off, which will create that yearning, that desire within people that, boss, what is happening with us is not correct. What this is not okay. Why are we being controlled like this? See, people are fighting the vaccines. Fine, fight the vaccines. And there were issues with the American vaccines. We've taken vaccines in India. You will not find an Indian fighting against the vaccines. Our vaccines were well tested. They were late, as a matter of fact. A lot of people say, oh, you Indians, you didn't know, you know, this, that, because they were actually being tested. So people like me have taken 3 booster shots. I don't have a problem. I don't see anybody in the street having a problem. People say, oh, digital currency, the government will control everything and this and that. No, it doesn't. It's a free game. As a matter of fact, when you go to buy, converting in dollar at 10-cent thing from a street vendor, that guy has a QR code. And you ask him, why are you using this? He says, Sub, I can't carry this much cash home here. I walk around as if there's nothing because everything goes to my bank. I don't care.
I was witnessing, I traveled extensively in India this time, from north.
It's amazing.
South. Amazing, miraculous. The trains, I traveled in trains after 96 and I was amazed.
So I have 2-3 apps which are amazing, and I'd like to just tell you. There's something called Digi Yatri. When I travel, right, everything is there. So when I walk to the airport, that guy he's got everything. I just put my phone there. He's got my ID. Everything is loaded in that. The door just opens up and you walk in. People will keep calling data breach, data this. Oh, what data are you talking about? You're putting the same photograph of yours on Instagram. There is no privacy left. Let's be very, very fair. What is privacy? It's a perception. Don't do any stupid things. You'll be kept private. But if you're going to do stupid things, then expect to be bloody searched. I mean, what's wrong in that? I don't understand this whole thing. And look at the threats that we are sitting with. Are we in the same society as 1930s, where we didn't want to give our photograph somewhere and this and that? We're not in the same society. We're in a society where you have active threats within our societies. And I'm not talking about the authoritarian Chinese system who wants to control everybody by social credit scores. There's nothing of that sort within India. I go to drink a coconut water on a street vendor. It's 25 bucks Indian rupees, 25 rupees. That'll be what? I don't know. I mean, you do the math, sir.
40
with
cents.
Conversion to 40 cents. I pay with my phone. The guy smiles, I smile, and I walk off. Right? So, I mean, people are so happy because he doesn't have to carry that damn currency back. He doesn't have to sit and count it. He doesn't have to hire 3 people to write his books because everything is there in the bank. He just goes, takes a statement, put it for the tax, this thing, and says, see ya, I'm out of here. Life is easy. We need to look at stuff pragmatically rather than being crazy about it. Oh, government is going to control us. Well, let me break something out. If the governments wanted to control us, trust you me, we guys would not be having these conversations at all in the first place. Let me be very clear with that. Why have the internet was made by whom?
Indian guy.
Right. It was made to communicate intelligence, basically. And they've put it out to the world. Why? If they wanted to control you, they would have done this. Nobody's that stupid. They tried to control, it failed. You and I are talking about Western media. You're sitting in the West, I'm sitting in Southern India. You're sitting in America, I'm sitting in Southern India. Look at what we are doing.
I'm sitting in Southern USA.
There you go. Look at what we're doing. You're sitting in probably the sun is going down and the sun is bright on my head here. Look at what we are doing. Look, this is a revolution. We need to ensure that this revolution does not go out of hand the way that the leftist revolution went out of hand. That is the only thing. And we cannot equate everything that happens with something nasty and this thing. There is a global deep state. Let me break it to people. But it's not this, conspiracy theory of four guys meeting under a bloody fire lamp and trying to decide who got. No, it's not. It's guys who want to keep their money. And today, it's the guys who want to make money. It's all about the money. You can keep saying, oh, it is this and that. Let me tell you, and this is the last thing I'll say. Indian society lost $45 trillion. And I asked this question multiple times. Where is that money? It's sure not in the Western economies. Absolutely not. Where is it?
If you look at all the money which they looted from India, Yale University, Princeton, many of the premier American universities, British infrastructure, the lords, so-called lords, and the castles, shell companies, all these guys,
the tax havens,
Rothschilds, all these people, they became rich because of Indian money, Indian loot. And also people don't factor that from Mexico, I mean, India, the actual loot is almost like 200,000 tons of gold and is disappeared. But from Mexico, just the Mexico country, 60,000 tons of recorded gold stolen just from Mexico.
Iraq. Where is all that gold? I mean, see, people need to realize, yes, there are conspiracies around the place. But those conspiracies aren't to control you. They're just to make money. Right? Let me be very clear. And a side effect of that is they need to keep the populations dumb and stupid. And today, that's why people hate reading books. People hate reading altogether. People hate having conversations. People hate meeting people. The algorithms of Instagram and TikTok have made you so aggressively focused on that you cannot think about anything else except for this thing. But I see a change, sir. I see a change. I see people coming out today and saying the sheer factor that you and I know Instagram and TikTok are a problem tells you a lot.
The average American, if you ask even today, I'm telling you today morning's coffee shop experience, if they think about India as a country of snake charmer, today,
they'll be shocked.
They will be shocked. I know that. Like when I go to Americans, whenever I meet, I said every single airport in India is better than an average airport in the US, and I can vouch for it. I travel all these small cities.
Come to Bangalore airport, sir.
I was there.
They freaking have gardens hanging from the ceiling. The entire garden is hanging from the ceiling, and you wonder how did they do that? Where is the water coming? Who's watering the plants there?
I took pictures.
The system is there.
And even small airports like Raipur, Bilaspur, small airports. I went to Trichy, amazing airports. I mean,
so I can go from Mysore to Goa, which is about 1,200, 1,300 kilometers, right? In about 3,000 Indian rupees.
Look at that. It's almost
3,000 Indian rupees will be what? I don't know.
$80, less than $80, $50.
Less than $80, $50, $50, $60.
Yes.
There you go. And I go in a flight. Beautiful airport.
And also you have options of train, you have options of road. I mean, here we have only one option, plane. You don't have another second option.
Yeah, here there's multiple, sir. You can take, and in that also, I can take a flight that will cost me about 5,000 Indian rupees and get a meal and get a little larger seat and this and that. So I have options there also.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of options. I mean, Americans usually do not know. And those of you who are watching and people who are recording, and Sandra is surprised right now. She's listening to our conversation because I did not tell this aspect of it. She saw my other aspect, the Trichy, the Ranganath temple and other things. The one last question I have.
Please.
The social media in India, like I am on Koo also, so people can check me out on Koo. Nothing has picked up. And those are all hosted on all on American platforms because the App Store is still controlled by the Google and the Apple. Devices are like that.
That's
And
why they're not picking up.
parallel infrastructure is not there. App registration and other things are not there. So, you know, for the world to have an answer, Chinese have TikTok. We don't have a parallel system, which needs to be there because 1.4 billion people cannot be at the mercy of a country of 350 million people. I mean, if you compare the demographies actually, then the Uttar Pradesh chief minister is equivalent to the
President of
president of the
USA.
United
Yeah,
States,
yeah,
in terms of demography and the votes that he needs to win the election. So, but again, the conspiracy of nation states. There's so many things come to my mind. Nation state concept we were discussing yesterday.
yeah,
That
yeah.
how foolish that system is, which compares a country of Luxembourg to India, a country of Finland to India, Sweden to India. Not possible. Both having one vote in the UN General Assembly, and very disproportionate system. Plus the media controlled talking points from WEF or many other places. Uh, we don't even go there because the scope
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
going to be over the time. So, what are the last words you have? So, the key learning people can take from this discussion of ours on the media.
So you talk about Indian social media. Let me just say this: who sits on top of Google? An Indian. Who sits on top of Twitter? An Indian. Who sits on top of pretty much every big little thing? So I'd kind of say, okay, fine, you can store our data, but we own the damn shit. And I'll give you a small example. Sorry for that word. When again, a lot of learning comes out of wars, right? So India stood with Israel and said, we stand by you because we've gone through the same terrorism, right? In 1947, the raiders in Kashmir came and raped our women. And trust you me, the whole invasion got delayed because the women in the north are extremely beautiful. So when the raiders came there, their commanders kept saying, move forward. But they said, no, 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 the women are very pretty. We want to rape them first. In 1965 in Kashmir, the same thing was done again. In 1990, the Kashmiri Pandits went through the same thing as what Israel has gone through. Nobody cried about it. Nor do we. It's a part of our history. We accept it, and we will not let that happen to us again. If you look at the social media today, sir, the way we responded to the Israel war, because all of us felt really bad. We said, yeah, we've gone through this. We can understand what that country goes through. So we put out a solidarity. A lot of the leftists, large leftist speakers, I remember this one gentleman's tweet, and I won't name him. It's all right. He's an American person. He said, these damn Indians have taken over Twitter. Every third thing about Israel is an Indian post. Seems like the information and the disinformation campaign both. My apologies. It just seems like the information and the disinformation campaign both are being run by India. I don't know what to do anymore. Is this owned by America or is it kept in somewhere in India? He was so frustrated by the sheer factor and the sheer volume of stuff which was coming out. So he tweeted this. And there's this popular account in India run by a lady called the Pole Lady. She wrote at the bottom, she said, mind you, sir, all of us aren't even online as of now. So be careful. So I laughed. I said, look at this. The poor guy would have got a heart attack when he read that. Yeah. I am as it is frustrated. This woman is saying half of us are not even online as of now. It's, how much percentage of Indians are online as of now in Twitter? 2%. And we're a storm. As far as Indian social media platforms are concerned, I think Indians are more concerned with the world today. They want to interact with the world. Indian social media will restrict them to keep them within the Indian society. And that is one of the challenges these platforms are facing because there's been an Indian launch, a launch within our country, but there's not been a worldwide launch of these platforms. Right? And that is a problem because I want to interact. I want to know what's happening. I don't know, in Nagorno-Karabakh in Azerbaijan. I want to know what's happening. I want to know which ship got hijacked by the Houthis and I believe the Americans have freed one ship. I want to know about that from an American source. What do they have to say? I want to know how the Britishers are feeling about the whole Rwanda and Suella Beverman thing. So the globalization of information, which an average Indian today is consuming, and I'm not saying this out of boastfulness. Trust you me, people know what's happening around the world. I mean, we sit on our lunch tables and dinner tables, and you'll find people talking about it. And especially to me, I'm involved in geopolitics, so people will come and ask you a very tricky question, and you wonder, wow, where'd that come from? You know, it's quite interesting. That is one flaw that I see as part of an ecosystem that is actually trying to communicate with the larger world across. The platforms that are based in the US have given that opportunity for people to cross connect. And that is good in a large way, but it also creates trouble of data and this and that and all that stuff. That whole data privacy and data security and this and that, that's whole another story altogether. The Chinese tried it. But see, the problem with the Chinese is they don't know where to draw the line. They always exceed the line. They think people will not notice it because the Chinese are the smartest people in the world and everybody else is as dumb as a piece of wood. Let me just say this. You're not. Because people can see through what's happening. Nobody is that big of a fool to not realize that TikTok is doing damage to societies. Look what Nepal did. An obscure little country, beautiful country. I think one of my favorite countries after my own. Banned TikTok. And it borders China. It's got the guts enough to standing up to China and saying, listen, get lost. The Saudis are saying the same thing. You know, the Saudi people are deleting TikTok on their own. They're saying we don't want this is terrible. We don't want it. Government are not saying anything. The Saudi people are deleting TikTok. There was a huge trend in Saudi Arabia of taking this off. America is realizing it to a large extent. A lot of the Republicans are talking about Marco Rubio, I think, had written an article recently talking about the ill effects of TikTok and stuff like that. I think a couple of other Congress people have also written an article about this stuff and they've spoken about it. But America, you know, the freedom has been taken too far off. People don't realize the Chinese are using your systems against you. And that is part of their warfare. Please read a book written by two Chinese colonels, Air Force colonels in 2006 called Unrestricted Warfare. They say this is war. For Chinese, fighting an army is not their capability because they can't. They're physically weak. And I'm not being a racist. That's how, I mean, Indians aren't the best athletes in the world. Let me just, okay. If anybody will say, oh, this Indian is a racist guy. No, let me, okay. Put my this thing down. We're not the best athletes in the world because we're heavy people. Right? Our bones are very heavy. So it's very difficult to run and this and that. Chinese are physically not that strong. That's how they are. Right? There's nothing right or wrong about it. They don't like to fight. They want to not fight and still defeat you. How do you do that? By breaking someone down within. And that is what all this is doing to the US society. People are realizing it. I'm not saying people are not realized it. But the faster it happens, the better it is. People, things like TikTok, things like, I mean, you're letting Chinese state media propaganda in the hands of your children. That's what it is. Now, somebody will say, oh, US also, this same thing is happening now. When you're using YouTube, you're ensuring your child. Yeah, let's be clear. There is a big difference between YouTube and Baidu. Baidu is part of the Chinese military, right? It's part of their warfare tactics. And I'm not saying this, their own books say it. Their own military white paper, 2016, 2014, 2019, 2021, talks about this. But sadly, you know, the problem is, as I said, these same social media platforms has made us not wanting to read anymore because we want to consume everything in 60 seconds. I'm sure your platform, we've been talking for an hour. My platform is the same. We talk for an hour and a half, no problem. But people say, na, please do your show in 10 minutes, in 20 minutes.
No 2-minute noodles.
Come on, man. You're trying to analyze something. You can't do it it's stupidity. So what if this platform does? Brought everything down to 60 seconds. You know that. What has it done to the you know, a certain balance within the genders. What has it done? It's broken down every little thing, and people are just not realizing it. And I seriously think that people should look at traditional civilizations. Russia, India, these are traditional civilizations that push, that imbibe all this stuff. They analyze it and they start pushing back after that, which is what has started to happen within India today. The pushback has started. It'll take a long time, but it will happen. So
In
the
America,
US society needs to kind of think about this very clearly. And it's not a government and this and that. Don't expect the government to do this for you. It has to be done by the people.
see, the settler civilization in the USA is like uh, it's not the American civilization, it's still a European civilization.
Yeah, it's not
Settler civilization,
nationalistic.
yeah, but the Native Americans in the USA, they are a national civilization, nationalistic. See, because they are connected to the land. And it's a very common saying in the native communities. And American USA has done a very good job after destroying them to preserve Native American tried their good job to after destroying them, the post-colonial, neo-colonial agenda. And to instead of apologizing, they're saying we're investing this much money. But I can say one thing. I did research on when I wrote my last book, and most of the Native American sites are still there. And I was opposing Excel pipeline because it went through the Native American sacred site, and I don't want any settler communities to destroy Native American sites. So I was opposing that. But other than that, most of the sites are there. The only difference is the church has played a very bad role in providing access to those places, and which Native Americans complain. And I hope, and very surprising, since we're talking about the left has supported them in a big way, and the right has worked against them. The traditional left and right definitions change in the US as compared to India. So in India, so there are some things good over there, some things bad over there, but the wokeism has been used extensively first against the Native American communities. The American Constitution gave citizenship to Native Americans in 1925. उसके पहले नहीं दिया. And the Black African Americans got the right to vote in 1965, even though the law was passed in 1870. So this is a material facts over there. But nonetheless, today's problems are different, and we are fighting a much bigger battle. You see, when you see the conflict from India's perspective, looks completely different. When you look from American perspective, looks completely different. And here, it is going to affect the American military preparedness also, because we see the pronouns getting introduced in the US military. And I live in the California state, and I have to comply with all the laws. So I'm not going to get into the details of the LGBTQ soup as well as the pronouns. I won't get into there. But anyway, Adi Achint, thank you.
I've added two people to the abbreviation, by the way. It's Khalistan and Hamas.
I saw that, KH. Yeah, so I mean, those people are some things America cultivates for other countries. Those are those people. And
No, this is basically done to see. I'll tell you, the main thing is it is done to break down the family structure,
correct.
right? And create something called individualism. Individualism is easier to control. When you're united, it's very difficult to control. So you break down the family structure, and then you kind of control it. That's why today, as I mentioned, a lot of the corporates are shedding away this ESG score. It's all paper compliances today. Previously, about 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. You would lose your entire funding if you didn't.
I mean, the HR is being replaced by the culture department. So we all see that happening. So a lot more to talk, Adi, and we can
Absolutely.
continue on and on. But thank you for deep insights, and thank you for coming on the show. And thank you for all the viewers for watching it. Thank you. Keep watching, and namaste.
Namaskar.